A tragedy at an Arizona shooting range is reigniting the gun debate this morning. You may have seen this video. Captures the final moments of shooting instructor Charles Vaca's life. He was teaching a 9-year-old girl how to use an Uzi, the submachine gun. The gun recoiled, causing her to lose control of the gun, accidentally killing Vaca in a spray of bullets. The video is sparking so many questions, especially about the age that children should be allowed to handle guns. CNN political commentator Ben Ferguson and CNN commentator and legal analyst Mel Robbins join us now. Good to have you both. We just had to talk about this because it has lit up the news and social media. Ben, you have experience, both of you have experience with guns. I want to talk about instruction first of all. Instructor training specifically. Yeah, look at this video and tell us what you see that is not right.
A lot of things. First, if you're an instructor, you always stand behind the person, and you
no matter their size,
no matter their size, because if they lose control of the gun, you don't want to be beside them. I grew up. My dad was in law enforcement. I mean, he never stood beside me. It was always a simple issue of I'm behind you. My hands are able to get over that gun. And the other issue is it's not as much an issue about age as it is about the person shooting the gun. I would never hand an Uzi to my mom or my wife or a lot of my friends because of the nervousness of it. You have to be proficient. This is not a toy. It's not something, it's not a theme park. You know, this is a gun that this young girl should have never been handed based on her ability, and they should have never loaded that magazine with an entire full clip. I mean, if you're going to shoot this, even when I shot my first one, the guy loaded in 3 bullets. Because there is going to be muzzle rise. I mean, everyone knows that. And so when you load 3, it's over and you only got to here. Well, you load the thing all the way up and you don't know what's going to happen. It's going to come up over your head, especially with a young child. So it should have never happened. He should have never given that to her. And if he did, he would have had his hands over it.
And also, one more thing. We understand that he also tried, I mean, if the media reports are accurate, switched it from semi-automatic to fully automatic. Yeah. So in other words, it's not just pull the trigger one shot, pull the trigger one shot. It's a spray.
Yeah.
Why?
Even a lot of military, like they have fully automatic weapons, but a lot of times they'll shoot in 3-shot bursts. I mean, they do that in Iraq and Afghanistan because it is that hard to control a gun like that. I mean, and you want to be on target. You don't want to be shooting fully automatic and it coming up. You're going to shoot a couple, re-aim, shoot a couple. I mean, he should have maybe given her 2 or 3 bullets at the most.
Mel,
and he totally screwed that up.
Ben doesn't think it's necessarily a question of age. I think it is. It makes me crazy to think that a 9-year-old would have had what is capable of firing 600 to 650 bullets in a minute.
Yeah, this is a military-grade weapon developed by the Israeli army that's meant for a soldier, not a 4th grader on vacation. And so the idea that there shouldn't be an age limit on handling a gun like this, even on private property, even at a gun range, is absolutely absurd. And to me, you know, I mean, I'm somebody who loves to shoot a 12-gauge shotgun and shoot clay pigeons. And we introduced our 9-year-old to target shooting this summer while we were on vacation, which makes this story, to me,
your
even more senseless. What's that?
We're showing the picture of your little one there at the shooting range.
No, that's, oh yeah, my father's behind him. He's shooting a .22 caliber rifle. He's got the rifle strapped down to a table. He's sitting down, and that's how you introduce it. If you're going to introduce kids to guns, you do it responsibly. Handing an Uzi to anyone under the age of 18 should be illegal because some adults think that it's okay to do it. I mean, Ben's talking about assessing the person. Forget it. They shouldn't be able to shoot it unless you've had certain types of training and unless you're a certain age.
Well, but I think part of this is going under the age of the instructor's the person in charge. I shot an Uzi, a fully automatic weapon, before I was 18 years old. I was in a controlled environment. I was there with other people that shot those guns. Not when I was 9, but again, that goes back to the core issue.
You shouldn't have been allowed to do it, Ben.
But there's some adults that shouldn't be allowed to have this gun. Even, I don't care. It's not an issue so much to me about the age. It is the issue of if you see the person, they are nervous, they shouldn't be holding probably any gun at that moment in time. You should start them small.
But you yourself said she should never have had the gun. You yourself say there are other people who should never have guns. So what do you do about it? Do you need rules and regulations? Are there some that you would support?
I think
what if this were to mute? You can't get on a freaking roller coaster, you know, unless you're this tall. So do they have to put like a head measurement there?
I'll put it this way. It's like, you know, young kids, would you give them an ATV? Probably not. Would you give them a little kiddie one with a governor on it? Yes. It's the same thing. There should have been a course. She should have had to take a class at this range to be able to shoot this gun. gun with her family. You just don't hand a gun to anybody, a powerful gun in that matter. I mean, I shot a 22. I went to the range recently with my wife. I didn't hand her my gun because she hates it. It's too big. It doesn't feel comfortable to her. But she's a grown adult. She could handle it, but I don't want to give her something she doesn't know how to really or want to shoot. These are powerful, powerful weapons.
And Mel, as you were saying, it's important to teach children about gun safety. They do need to know the rules, and you are doing it responsibly with your son. Do you think it is commonplace for Uzis to be available at gun ranges, or was this a complete outlier in Las Vegas?
I think it's actually common. I mean, people are making money doing this, and there's a fascination with firing these kinds of weapons. And, you know, the problem with what Ben was just saying, respectfully, Ben, is that, yeah, there should have been, but there's no laws that require gun ranges to have these types of safety measures in place. And just in Massachusetts, just 4 years ago, there was an 8-year-old at a gun show that fired an Uzi under the supervision of his father, and it recoiled, and he shot and killed himself. So this is not an outlier. This is going on in America all over the place.
And I think one of the most important things about all this is I hope people tell this little girl, and all of America tells her, this was not her fault.
This was a terrible, terrible accident.
This was not her fault. She should have absolutely never had this in her hands, and people should let her know this because she's going to need counseling. And I hope she gets it, but I hope America responds, lets her know, you're not a murderer, you're not a killer, and she should be getting as much counseling as she needs on this because it's going to stick with her for the rest of her life, and that's the tragedy of this.
But to that end, and I really hope that that is the takeaway for this child, because this is a 9-year-old who feasibly her life could be changed forever from this, and we don't want that to happen. Talk about what needs to happen, though, Mel, in terms of regulation, because we talk about this before. When we see these things happen, is it about instructor training? Is it about limitations on the gun ranges? Is it more about gun control? What is it to you?
Well, to me personally, and this will never happen because of the NRA, I personally think that nobody should be allowed to fire a weapon like this until they're 18 years old, and that the gun industry, in terms of shooting ranges, should have standard regulations that they need to be following that are what Ben's talking about. Somebody going up the scale of firing a 22, then firing a 20 gauge, then firing a 12 gauge, and moving up the range so that you develop a comfort level in a controlled environment.
Too, right?
Correct. And you understand how to use the selector, and you understand the stance, and you understand the muzzle rise.
And you don't put 30 rounds or 20 rounds in a fully automatic weapon when you're handing it to a 9-year-old child.
Right.
I mean, that's the core. There should have been maybe 2 or 3 bullets at a time. They should have reloaded, because that's not going to get away from you without someone being able to stop it, to put their hands on it. But this instructor should have been behind her, not beside her. There's so many things here that fell through the cracks, and I think that's really on the gun range.
But when common sense does not prevail, as we saw in this case, do you agree with Mel that there could be some regulations involving age and weapons?
I would be okay with some sort of guaranteed time of learning before you shoot it. But I think the big concern is if we focus so much on age, we're not focusing enough on the reality is the majority of Americans can't buy these guns. You go to a range to shoot them. I shot one before I was 18 years old. It was absolutely no problem. And so it was an amazing moment with my dad. I think it was actually my birthday, if I remember correctly, and it was, we're going to go shoot something that we don't own, that we can't have.
You also see there's no harm, there will be people who say there's no harm in waiting till you're 18. The same way, there's probably a 9-year-old that can quite handily operate his dad's tractor on the farm, but should 9-year-olds be driving tractors legally? No. Do you know what I mean? There's no harm in waiting.
I don't think there's a harm in waiting, but if you have the right instructor, this doesn't happen. And maybe the regulation goes on the instructor. Maybe there is more responsibility with that. Maybe there's more training for them. I mean, this was a bad instructor. And it cost him his life.
Which is a crying shame.
It is.
I mean, family mourning loss.
But again, this young girl,
I
hope that everyone watching rallies behind her, because I don't want her to ever think this was her fault. This was not her fault. My heart goes out to her because I cannot imagine the guilt through her life, and I hope that people let her know, so when she goes back and Googles this later in life, because you know she will, people see that, that people are like, this is not your fault. Yeah. This was not your fault, because I can't imagine being that young and thinking that you killed somebody.
Of course, and I pray her little 9-year-old friends are just as sympathetic.
Absolutely. Mel, Ben, thank you so much. We know this is going to generate a lot of discussion. It certainly has here. Go on to Facebook. Let us know what you think. Facebook.com/New Day. Keep the conversation going. We'll get some opinions from you.